Detroit Den 313. We're back. Stephen Will, ready to talk that Detroit Lions football. But before we get started, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button. Don't forget the bell icon so you don't miss any of our new content. Steve, talk to the people.
More NFL draft prospects. This is what we love doing, at least for me. How do you feel about talking NFL draft prospects? Love it,
Honestly,
hate it, still heartbroken?
honestly, I'll give a 100% real answer. I was kind of getting worried that people might be getting burned out on the draft prospects or too many too quick, or if we wouldn't have enough time to talk about all of them, or as we started getting down in the nitty gritty of this thing, maybe second, third, and fourth rounders, people wouldn't be digging it. But I've had multiple people send messages or just talk to me one on one and say, "Hey, man, I think it's super cool what you guys are doing. It gives me an opportunity to be able to get up on guys that I wouldn't even have known to dig into. That gave me a little jolt of energy, so I'm excited."
I love talking NFL draft. I don't like talking it when we should be in the Super Bowl tomorrow or today, whatever we decide. But I mean, it's just the way we got to be right now, right? Just is what it is.
Is what it is,
So
man.
we're going to talk about a couple guys today that I think these are realistic options. I think sometimes when we talk NFL draft and some prospects and some guys that we really like, sometimes it's not 100% realistic. It's maybe got like an 80% chance of happening. But with today, the two guys we're talking, I think both of these guys will be available at 29, possibly. High chance. I'd say 95%. Never know what's going to happen. Combine still's got to go on. But I think we have realistic expectations for these guys. So let's start off with TJ Tampa, quarterback from Iowa State. Will, this is a guy you kind of mentioned, did a little homework on him. I'll let you lead this one. It's your boy.
Yeah, so bottom line is this, man. When we talk about guys that fit our culture, he fits our culture. But I do want to say this. I see a lot of people talking about the Detroit Lions need to draft a number one corner. As I look through our draft prospects, I'm not sure that there is a number one corner in this draft, right? That's just how I feel. Now, could potentially Kool-Aid or Nate Wiggins be number one corners? I think so, but I think that's pretty much end of list when we're talking about number one corners in the next couple of seasons. Now, will somebody graduate year 3, 4, or 5, kind of like a Iffy Melifonwu, and step into that role maybe? But day one, number one corner, there may not be one in this draft, and I'll tell you that if there is, every one of them is going to struggle. There is no Sauce Gardner in this draft. And something that I'll get into a little later is our Iowa corner that everybody's high on. Not that he's not a great player, but he's not. I guarantee he's not going to come into this league and be a number one corner day one. So that being said, when we're drafting at 29, I want people to keep that into perspective. We're not drafting the number one corner. We're drafting somebody that can come in and help us. And I think TJ Tampa can definitely do that. He's a great tackler. He's a physical guy. He's 6'2". He's 200 pounds. He's bigger than a lot of the corners in the NFL. He plays with that toughness and that grit that Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell are looking for. So I just think that he's just a fit. He's not a guy that's just gonna mirror guys' feet like Wiggins or Kool-Aid McKinstry, but he's a guy that can get down on in press coverage. He can play zone coverage. He can pretty much do it all, man, at a solid level. And I don't know about an elite level. What do you think about him?
You took my questions right out of me.
I apologize.
I had questions on this. I've been over here just hammering away on some notes while we were getting ready, and you just pretty much stole my thunder right there. So I'm going to allow it. My first question was going to be, when you're drafting a guy from now on, what we have to look at, I think, is you said the word culture. To me, culture is this a quote unquote Dan Campbell guy? That's the motto I'm going to start using when I'm looking at these kids. I talked about it earlier with Braylon Trice, Dan Campbell guy. Same question when it comes to TJ Tampa. Is he a Dan Campbell type of guy? I think you already answered it in yes. But I think that's what we got to start looking at. And you're right. I don't know if there's a cornerback that I truly, truly love, especially when we're picking at pick 29. Your hands are kind of limited. I think to go up and get one of those guys like Kool-Aid McKinstry, Nate Wiggins, even the guy you kind of mentioned, Cooper DeJean, something is going to have to change in our draft status where they're not going to be there at 29. I think we could both agree on that. So what we need is, like you said, someone to come in and help. What do you think his role will be if this is a guy we draft? What will his day one role be?
I think his day one role will be whatever he earns. It's been said numerous times. And I just want to stay, when we say Dan Campbell guy, we also should say a Chris Spielman guy and a Brad Holmes guy, because those guys I feel like are the ones that kind of ironed in this culture, and I love it. But those, I think Chris Spielman, and you said it before, Chris Spielman was the one that kind of kicked this thing off, getting Dan Campbell and getting Brad Holmes involved in this thing with Sheila. That he was the one that kind of set the groundworks and the foundation for this house that we built that should be in the Super Bowl, like you said. I just had to put that out there. But even with that being said, man, I think that day one, he is a guy that's going to be doing what they talk about all the time, competing. He's going to be a guy that's going to be holding the Cam Suttons of the world accountable. He's going to be a guy if we do resign guys like Emmanuel Mosley, Kendall Vildor, the list goes on. The CJ Gardner Johnsons and Brian Branches, that secondary room. He's going to be a guy that's holding those guys accountable and letting them know that he's nipping at their ankles and they got to stay on their P's and Q's.
So you don't think he's cornerback one? Like he's not going to be like that. Hey man, this is a guy you can put out there on Justin Jefferson, DJ Moore, Christian Watson. Guys in our division that we're going to see. Six times a year. He's not that kind of guy yet.
Not day one. I don't think that. And even if he showed that elite potential, I think that we have a situation where they're going to make him earn it. No different than Jack Campbell. Campbell didn't come in and have Derek Barnes' position. He had to go through the trenches and earn it. I think regardless of who we bring in, you're going to have to go through, figure out what the NFL and grown men are about playing in this league and go through the trenches to go get your spot, man.
I've always said, I think that defensive back is probably the hardest position to play in the NFL. Would you agree, or do you think there's another one?
I completely disagree. I think that quarterback position is pretty hard.
I mean, yeah, for a quarterback, yeah, you have to know literally everything. But other than a quarterback, I think it's defensive back. Today's NFL, you can't touch people. You can't hardly hit people. If you sneeze on a guy, it's a 15-yard penalty. So finding these quote-unquote shutdown corners that a lot of people seem to think that just, pop up every draft like, oh, this guy's a shutdown corner. He Sauce Gardner. Not the case. Doesn't always work out like that. And more often than not, especially picking at 29, the chances are if we take a corner, they're going to be a role player. They're going to be, like you said, whatever he earns, he's going to have his side of the field. He's probably not going to be shadowing, but I think it's the hardest position in football other than quarterback. So it's kind of like the deck stacked against you already.
Yeah, it's definitely up there, man, in the positions of toughness. I would agree with that.
Do you think TJ Tampa is a first-round talent?
I do. I think he's on the borderline, though. I think, and maybe in a different draft, he would be a little bit higher. But in this draft, I think he's a borderline guy. He's a guy that I could see slipping into the second round. I mean, at the bottom line, you never know, because you got guys like Brian Branch who slip into the second round, who's definitely a first-round talent. So, but I do, yeah, I think that he's definitely got first-round ability. But depends on what you like. There's a lot of corners, that some of them that we talked about already. When I look through this list of guys, after I get past Wiggins and McKinstry, the guys are very similar in their skill sets. That it's whether you like the physical guys, whether you like the guys with great feet and great hips, you're starting to, it's a matter of preference.
I'm with you 100%. So, like I said, I don't think he's a first-round talent either, but I also don't think he's fallen all the way to 61. So, will he be available at 29? Like I said in the beginning, yeah, he'll be available. That doesn't mean we should take him. Just because he might be the highest-rated cornerback doesn't mean that Brad Holmes is going to value him over, I don't even know, a wide receiver. We don't know. Nobody knows what Brad Holmes is thinking.
Yeah, and I think the bottom line is this too, and people got to understand, it's going to be about who we have as our top corner. It doesn't matter what Mel Kiper is saying. It's a matter of what we value, who fits our scheme, and what's the best value player. So, guys, don't get it set in stone. And as we talk about these draft picks, don't be surprised if we talk about them again, because we still got combines, we still got pro days. If somebody comes in and runs a crazy 40 time, we'll be talking about that. Or, if they just look phenomenal at their pro day, we'll be talking about those things. So these are just based off of the film and based off of what we know right now, what our mindsets are.
I'm glad you brought that up about Mel Kiper, because I remember, last year, and I'm guilty. I confess the sin. I've always followed the Mel Kiper, Todd McShay mock drafts, and I always thought that was like the way, the truth, and the life, until we started doing podcast stuff and looking at players from a different perspective. going on YouTube, looking at their highlights. You know how I feel about highlights. Everyone can put together a highlight. But if you actually just watch football, like when Jahmyr Gibbs was drafted, everyone was just throwing an absolute fit. And we were like, okay, we thought he could slide to the second round, but we don't hate the player. We don't hate the player at all. And I think this is just kind of the same thing. Like everyone gets enamored with Todd McShay, Mel Kiper. They read their 38 mock drafts that they put out and they're right on 5% of them. And they think that these guys are gods, but more often than not, those guys are wrong.
Man, I'm gonna be in, and I know a lot of the people that watch our podcast oftentimes challenge us and challenge me on a personal level about things that I say and people I believe in or things that may be far fetched, but I'll stand on it. Let me say this, guy, and the guys probably still won't even remember who he is. And I remember you even said when I said it, you were like, "Man, get the heck out of here! What are you talking about?" Marte Mapu, right? Last year, right? Went crazy about him. He started for the New England Patriots this year. You know what I'm saying? Like, this isn't a game. This isn't a game out here. Where this isn't. We say it all the time. This isn't just a hobby. We're watching these dudes. Like, so it's I have a strong confidence in. I'll say an ability to evaluate talent, and we don't just watch highlights. We watch film. It's something that we take seriously. So if we want to chat about it, guys, I'm always up for a conversation, and I'll always back it with some film study.
Marte Mapu. That's a name I didn't think I'd ever hear again.
Yeah, like I said, he was out there starting for the New England Patriots. Dog.
They're picking third in the draft. So I mean, pretty much I could have been on that defense and maybe made an
Dog.
impact.
He's a dog.
All right, let's move on. Our second guy of the day, same position. We're kind of keeping a category here. We're talking corners. I'm only talking about this kid, excuse me, because I've looked at like 5 or 6 mock drafts. I look at the credential ones. I look at Sports Illustrated, Bleacher Report, ESPN, and I don't know which ones did which, but I think if I watched or looked at 10 mock drafts, this kid was mocked to the Detroit Lions probably 4 times out of 10, 40%. Ennis Rakestraw, quarterback from Missouri.
Yeah, man.
Listen, this kid's not he's not a household name. If you're not a diehard Mizzou Tigers fan, you probably don't even know who he is. I had to do some research, but what are your initial thoughts on old Ennis?
Swag. He plays with a swag about him, man. He talks his talk. He's more of a slender guy. And as we were just talking about, you got guys that play the game from a physical standpoint, they're physical corners, and then you got guys that are more slender. They got the swivel to their hips, they're in and out of breaks. He is more of a slender guy. He can play pretty solid man covers. I'm not, like I said, we're not using that word lockdown corner, but he's more of a guy that can play press man. Like I said, I love the way that he's got a certain level of moxie about himself, and he's won against good talent. But I think he's getting mocked because he's one of those guys that could be there at 29. Right. He's one of those guys that could realistically be available at 29. Also, like you said earlier, it's TJ Tampa. But that has a certain skill set that we need. Honestly, I don't know that any of these guys are guys that are Brad Holmes are necessarily going to take, but I definitely think that he is a solid option. How do you feel about him?
So from the research I've done, I go in, I look at some YouTube stuff, some highlights, and I hate highlights. I just hate highlights. I try to watch actual game film. Do I have time to sit down and watch 12 SEC games? No, I don't. I don't have time for that. So I try to pick and choose who they go against. Who was their biggest competition this year? The Georgia game. Georgia was their biggest game on their schedule. Mizzou kind of came out of nowhere. They had a phenomenal defense that really I didn't even know was. I was like, Mizzou's ranked in the top 10. So when did that happen? How did they pull that one over my eyes? Didn't even realize it. They started getting into their defensive stats. And everything I looked at, they were talking about how Ennis was the heart and soul of this defense. Like he was the guy. And someone said on a broadcast I was watching earlier that he's quote unquote one of the league's best in man coverage in college. So do you disagree or agree with that from a college standpoint?
I think that I would have to watch more film. I went by the rule, and I'm gonna give a shout out to Coach Fair. Coach Fair, he coached with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I got an opportunity to have him as our special teams coach, and I was picking his brain. But one of the things he said, when he watches film, he'll obviously you get a highlight tape. Back then, there was no huddle. They actually sent you highlight DVDs, but whatever. But you watch a highlight tape and then you go watch game film. He said one of the things that he would do is he would just turn on a random game at a random quarter and just watch the guy. Right. Because if you're a dog, you should play like a dog all the time. And then he would skirt through and pick a random time and watch another random quarter. And I try to take that. So I did watch a couple of quarters of his of him, playing, and he played well, man. But I can't tip my hat to him being the best, because Nate Wiggins is special to me. I think he's the best
You
corner
got
in
a
the
you got a
draft.
little man boner for Nate Wiggins, don't you?
I really like him, man. I think that he is. I think he's the best corner in this draft, man. Like, that's just, maybe I'm biased, but from what I've seen so far, I'm gonna keep digging. But from what I've seen so far, I think he's the best corner in this draft, hands down. You
All
might
right,
see him go number one off the board.
let me ask
Four
you this.
corners.
Let me ask you this way.
Talk to me.
Serious question. I demand a serious answer.
Okay.
Pick 29. Nate
Yeah.
Wiggins. You need a shutdown corner. You need a guy to go out there on an island, shut someone down. Nate Wiggins and Steve Perkins are on the board. Who you taking?
You already know, man. If I'm gonna take Steve Perkins to sit in the front row, and I'm taking Nate Wiggins to play corner for me.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. I thought we were friends.
I got
This
you
will
in
be
the building.
unbelievable. Front
I
row?
moved you up to the front row.
Unbelievable. I like my seats, actually. I'm good where I am. I don't need your front row pity. I need to get on that field. So one of the things I saw was a concern, and this isn't a concern for me. I look up some stuff. I go into some message boards. I see something about Ennis tearing his ACL in 2021. Everyone's saying don't draft the guy. Take him off your draft board. Is that any type of concern for you?
No, from what I've seen, man, and with modern medicine being the way that it is now, his knee was liable to be better than it was before. So because they say a lot of times when you hurt one knee, you're liable to hurt the opposite knee in short time. So if he's made it through that short time in 2021, it's not a
Yeah,
worry to me.
this will be almost 3 years ago by the time the
Yeah.
season starts. I'm not worried about it. He bounced back from that injury and had a phenomenal year stat wise.
Yep.
So I'm not worried about it. For those of you guys who are going to go look this kid up and you're going to see that ACL injury pop up on his, Wikipedia or whatever you're getting your information from, you'll see an ACL injury from 3 years ago. Nothing to be worried about. Adrian Peterson came back from an ACL injury within 9 months and ran for 2,000 yards. Today's technology is insane.
Okay.
ACLs used to be a death sentence. They're not anymore.
Not
Not
anymore,
a problem. So let's get into the questions when it comes to Ennis that we talked about with TJ Tampa. Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes, Spielman type guy.
The verdict's still out for me, because I did see that he got some penalties for running his mouth. So is it a situation where it could be distracting, or is it just him playing with a level of intensity? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But I do know that he plays, from what I've seen, with a certain swagger, with a certain intensity. So from that standpoint, I would say yes, from that standpoint, as long as that other stuff isn't anything that we need to be worried about. But I haven't got to watch interviews and hear people talk about his character, and then we never get. I really wish that we could be in get those thoughts when they do all these digging into these guys' background, get the notes on that. But
what the hell do you think he said to get a personal foul for talking trash? You damn near have to kill a guy on a field to get a 15-yard penalty in the NFL. I'm with you. I think Dan Campbell guy. I think he fits. Maybe, hey, tone it down just a little bit. Go out there, be yourself, play your game, have fun, have some energy, have some swag, but maybe not talk about certain stuff or whatever it is you're saying. I don't even know what it was, but
yeah,
to do that in the NFL, you really have to say something really, really. You have to threaten a referee's family, pretty much. I think, to get a 15-yard flag in the NFL.
I do see him making plays though, and then he's doing the screaming and the yelling, and you're not even allowed to look in a direction when you're yelling. You don't even have to be saying anything bad, but you can't look at the guy and yell in his face or do any of that stuff. So I see a lot of that as he's making plays, not him necessarily yelling in somebody's face, but those type of reactions. So that's the balance, and it was something that was mentioned, so it's just something to look out for.
Absolutely. Second and last question when it comes to Ennis: first round talent or no?
I think that he's a first round talent with definite CB1 upside, but he's a little bit lower down the cornerback list for a reason. So we'll see what he runs the 40 in. We'll see how he looks during his pro day, and then we'll come back and we'll reevaluate.
I'm going to say no, not a first round talent. I think he could, with a good pro day, good combine. I think he probably had, as for a corner, I think he's probably one of the guys who could gain the most from a good pro day or combine. But just watching him on tape, just against the Georgia game, didn't play bad, didn't do anything stupid. He was going up against Ladd McConkey quite a bit, and I think he's one of the most elite route runners in this draft. Not a overly powering presence at wide receiver, but I think if I had to pick someone who's going to be the best route runner in this class, it's going to be Ladd McConkey, and Ennis kind of held his own against him. Didn't do anything bad, but I don't see day one talent. Just me personally. But I also don't think he's going to be there at 61. So for those of you guys who are thinking he'll get him in the second round, probably going to have to trade up to get him. I think he'll go between 33 and 40. Well,
talk to me.
It's getting to be combine time. I'm getting excited
close
for the draft.
That's
So I just told you.
man.
I just told you earlier. We booked our Airbnb for the NFL draft. It's going to be time.
Yeah, I'm gonna be in the building as well. It's gonna be. I'm really looking forward to it, man. It's gonna be exciting.
Well, you can be in the building. I'll be outside where the draft's happening. I don't know where you plan on. I don't know where you plan on going.
You know what I mean.
You going to Wahlburgers? You going to?
I might. Who knows?
Well, they're closed, but Greektown Casino.
I might.
Astoria Bakery. I don't know where you're going to be, but I'll be outside watching the draft.
Who knows? Man, I got until pick 29. I got time.
True. You got about until 11:45. We got all the time in the world.
Plenty of time,
guys. Lastly, we've said this before. When it comes to draft and the combine, we're going to be talking about it a lot. What happens in those rooms during those interviews is far, far, far more important than anything you're going to see during these workouts. What I like when the Detroit Lions do Inside the Den and they give those little snippets of what type of questions they're asking a Sam Laporta and how he feels about run blocking. And he says stuff like, I love physically dominating another man. That's the kind of stuff that gets you drafted by the Detroit Lions. Yep. You can go out, you can run a 4.40. If you're not answering those questions right, if you don't know, or if you just know you're trying to BS your way through an answer, these teams are going to sniff it out. It's way more important. I would pay money to be in those rooms and just be a fly on the wall.
Yeah, same.
But we talked about a couple kids tonight, couple corners. Leave it in the comments down below. Let us know how you feel about each of them. Drop another name in the comments. We'll talk about it. If it pops up enough, we'll get together. We'll look up, do some research. We'll talk about them. Hit that like button, guys. If you're new to this channel, hit that subscribe button. We'll be back later with some more content.
Peace.